Well, in the past, when I thought of SOG pocket knives, I thought of assisted open, ultra light, budget-friendly blades. Well, SOG is breaking that mold with the Seal XR folder. This is a manual folder. It weighs a ton. It's made out of premium materials here in the USA. And so today we're going to talk concept on how it compares to other heavy-duty overbuilt folders like the Cold Steel Recon 1, the Gerber Auto 06, and we're talking concept. Does a fixed blade make more sense than a really heavy overbuilt folder, or does the convenience of a folding knife make it a gear item that's used more frequently than a fixed blade? I hope you guys will join me today as we take an in-depth look at this beast of a pocket knife. All right, guys, so we're gonna jump right into this video by hitting the blade end of this knife, the business end, what it's gonna be doing for you, the material, all of that. So right out of the gate, this thing from handle to tip is 3.9 inches. Actual cutting edge is around 3.75. You are looking at a high saber grind that goes up right here, right below the deployment hole there. You do have a swedge that's very mild. It's a very thick spine back there at 0.19, so it's a thick, it might be the thickest pocket knife I own. If not, it's really close. So it's really overbuilt. And I love the tip alignment is like right almost in line with that pivot there. So it just really makes for even like a bow drill, you know, or something like that. Really well done. Good relief edge there. The coating is a Cerakote coating, so super heavy duty, very wear resistant as well, which is a great plus. And then it is USA made CPM S35vn steel, Rockwell 59-61. I love that steel. I've used it a bunch. It's very wear resistant, so it's gonna hold a great edge, but it's not overly chippy. And we're about to see that in all the action, live action I'm about to show you here. And it's not too difficult to field sharpen as well, which is a positive for kind of the idea of this knife of definitely being like a field tactical, you know, utility knife. You want to be able to resharpen this in the field, and you can tune it up rather easily, that type of steel, and it's very rust resistant and resistant to humidity. So that's all awesome. Now with that, let's bounce to the actual usage of this knife. All right, guys, so here we go. I'll be doing all this testing with my beefy gloves, so you'll see the manipulation of the knife as well that way. And do remember, I've had this for about 2 months. I have not tuned this up as of yet, so it already has some wear on the edge, and we're about to do all this extra testing today. So we're gonna go through some paracord first, a big bundle of it. It's always a good way to test out how an edge is gonna do, particularly this style of knife. And you can see there, very easy. Hardly any pressure. And I always like doing some hemp rope because this is really difficult for a lot of knives to get through, maybe a couple passes, you know, sometimes. So there you go, just a little sawing. Do it one more time. There you go, nice. Quick cut through that. And then of course, seatbelt. You know, what if you roll over and you're using this as a rescue tool, something like that. There you go. And one of the benefits to a longer cutting edge, particularly with seatbelt, is that those shorter blades that are out there, maybe it's like 2 3/4, something like that. A lot of times, just because of the angle and the cut, you get like a little bit still attached, and so you're not fully free that first strike, and then you have to do a secondary sweep. So larger blades like this will be able to do that with one clean cut, which is really nice. So there's no secondary cutting to try and get out of a seat belt. So I always like doing really heavy duty horse mat. Got this from a local like feed store, farm store. So it's really dense, really heavy. So it's a good kind of way to see, hey, how does the edge geometry go with push? Wow, look at that push cut. That's crazy. So, I mean, you can see the thickness on that spine is crazy at 0.19, but because of the way they ground in the flat grind and the edge geometry, there you go. I'm not even putting any pressure. I'm barely having to exert myself, and it's going through that horse mat. So that's really nice. So, I mean, these harder tasks, it's doing really well so far. A quick push cut through that hemp rope again. There you go. Hardly any sawing needed. Again, this isn't fresh out of the box. I've been using this blade. Yeah, I mean, this is great for such a thick, beefy blade. I mean, I have fixed blades with the same stock thickness that can't do this type of cut this easy, just because the geometry isn't as good and the edge isn't as good as the factory coming out of SOG. I'll just do some polymer here. It's like some sort of detergent cleaner. Yeah, man. Now, I'm not telling you this is like a razor blade, because it's not, but you can see, I mean, and you can hear it in my voice. I'm not even exerting myself with these cuts. It's awesome. We'll do some cardboard. There you go. Not bad. Again, thicker blade. You can definitely get the job done. It's not, you know, a Spyderco Delica 4 or like my SOG Aegis, however you want to pronounce it. I mean, those are still going to slice a little bit better, but this is doing great. And we'll do some just precision cutting here. You can see there, even though this tip is pretty thick, it's able to do that very nicely. Cool. Quick stabbing. Check that out. That's awesome. That's some good penetration right there. The traction is great. I mean, I'm really locked in with that guard, with the way it is, particularly with gloves on. I mean, it's stabbing deep, and I feel super secure, not only with the locking mechanism, but with the grip design. So my least favorite test here, tip test. There you go. Look at that. Nice. And that went way deeper than a lot of the other knives I have. I mean, you can see that. That is awesome. Check out how deep that is, man. So this is penetrating, but then it's strong enough that I can put that lateral motion. Obviously not recommended, but I'm doing this for you guys, and this is supposed to be like a super overbuilt knife, so it should be able to handle some stabbing and prying. There you go. Obviously do that at your own risk, but that's really impressive for that type of pocket knife. Not only the penetration, but then the lateral strength. All right, I'm gonna do this part because this will be a lot of pressure, you know, if you didn't have gloves on. So you may say, well, you're doing it with gloves, because, I mean, you know, there's a ton of jimp that we'll talk about in the handle portion, ergonomics, but I just want to do some carving here. You know, what if you had to start a fire? It's feeling good in the hand, by the way. No issues there. And this isn't the first time I've done any carving with it. You can see there, getting pretty fine shavings. I mean, I'm happy with that for sure. That's great. And if I continued, get myself a spear or a steak, tent steak, you know, something like that. You can see how fast that's going. Nice. There you go. Easy. All right, folks, we're going to hit the locking mechanism here. This is the XR locking mechanism, and as I'm filming this, SHOT Show is going on, and they're releasing several new knives with this same locking mechanism. It's a pivot-style lock. Since the patent dropped off of the Axis lock from Benchmade, a lot of companies are starting to come out with their take on this. Now, this is rated for up to 1,500 pounds is what I read on SOG's website for this. I'm not going to hang 1,500 pounds. I don't have that to hang off of this knife. Somebody I'm sure will. It's very tough, very durable, and you're about to see that because as you hit this flipper, it flips open, and you can see here we have a huge stop bar, stop pin back there. I mean, you can just see how massive that is, and then the bar itself is very, very large. So what that does is you pull it back, it releases the blade, it kicks into place. Very strong lockup, up, down, left, right, no wobble. Very, very, very solid. Now this rides on ball bearing pivot right there. So when you release that, the weight of the blade actually sucks that in and brings that right back in. So it's a really fun blade. It's ambidextrous. The entire knife is ambidextrous with the pocket clip. I'll just hit that super quick so you can see that. Really overbuilt. You can unscrew that. It's got a huge lanyard hole, and you swap it to the opposite side there. Tip up. You got about 1 inch hanging out, so you can grab that very easily with gloves on and that type of stuff. Again, they really thought through the tactical, quote unquote, application for it. So easily grabbed as well. You can see it's kind of off to the side, and even with my leather gloves on that we saw earlier while I was working with work gloves, you can manipulate the locking mechanism. A lot of pocket knives, you can't manipulate the locking mechanism very well with heavier either winter or leather gloves. This allows you to do that. And I don't know how well you guys can see that there, but you can see the stainless steel liners in there all around the pivot as well. So you're getting super, super strong. You can see how big that pivot is. So that's all good. So one thing I want to highlight though, before we move on from the pivot and the deployment, is that these ball bearings, though so buttery smooth, amazing action, will be more prone to collect gunk and grit in them than, say, bronze bushing knives or even nylon bushing knives, just because there are all those little spaces in between the ball bearings, and it tends to be a little bit more maintenance requirement. So that's something to consider when you're looking at this knife. Is that a drawback to you? Some people would say yes. Some people would be like, I'm not going to be using it in like the sandbox, so it's not that big an issue for me. And that's really where we transition and talk about fixed blades versus folders, because any folder is going to get gunked up. It's just how fast. So things to consider. We'll talk about that a little bit later as we dive into the fixed blades, but I wanted to touch on that to help you keep that in mind as you're considering where and how you're going to be deploying this folder. Onto deployment, basically have three ways. We've got the big flipper here. It does have some pretty aggressive jimping that we're going to talk about with the handle later, but with bare hands, I can hit it. Not an issue there. And then you disengage the locking mechanism and you can float it right back into place. So that's the first way that you can deploy it. You can deploy it with this thumb hole. I don't really like to do that. It's just kind of an odd angle. Maybe it's just the big massive thickness of the handle and all that, but you can do it. It's just not my preference. I rarely use it. The final way is you can just literally pull back on the XR lock and that releases the blade. So you can just whip that thing out that way as well and not even hit the flipper. Now the jimping back here, again, we're going to touch on more in detail later, is pretty sharp and aggressive right there. So what I tend to do is once I just overcome the detent, which is really strong, it's a good strong detent, and I get my pressure there, which is good. You know, it's not going to accidentally flip open on you. Once I do that, I kind of tend to try to not graze the back spine. You don't need to. You don't have to put a lot of pressure to get it to overcome the detent, even though it's a strong detent. I don't know how they are able to do it, but it works really well. Great centering straight down the middle, and I've had this for a couple months and been playing with it a lot, done a lot of work with it, and no floating left and right. So the locking mechanism is solid, super, super strong and solid, and you basically have three different ways to deploy the blade all manually. Okay guys, as we look at the handle itself, what you can see right away, and why I have the SOG Seal Pup with us, Seal XR, Seal Pup, Elite, they copied all of the cutouts, all of the designing basically of the handle. It literally lines up perfectly with each cut-in. So if you own a SOG Seal Pup, you can get your hands on a SOG Seal Pup. You're basically getting the exact same handle design. The folder, I believe, is maybe just a hair thicker. I would have to double check that, and I'll try and annotate it in if I remember. But you can see there, if it's not the same thickness, the folder might be just a hair thicker. The folder is, I know, 0.71 on the thickness of the handle. The SOG Seal Pup is glass reinforced nylon. Those are what the handle scales are on the folder as well. Now, some people would be like, I don't know if I like that. It is not clacky or kind of hollow feeling like a lot of glass reinforced nylon Benchmades. You know, think of like a Benchmade Griptilian, something like that, because of the ridiculous liners in there. These steel liners are super thick, go all the way through. There is a little bit of milling out near the back there just to kind of help with weight. And then you have this big spacer into this non-lethal pommel strike back here that adds to the weight. This thing is going to come in at 8.2 ounces. It's one of the heaviest folders I own. It is massive. In contrast, this knife, the full tang larger SOG Seal Pup Elite, weighs in at 5.7 ounces, just the knife, and then it's 10 ounces with the sheath. So I mean, it's heavier as a knife in your hand than your SOG Seal Pup would be, and almost as heavy as the entire package. So things to consider, keep into consideration there, but it is so thick, heavy, overbuilt. It's well balanced for what that is, and the texturing matches basically as well. Now, the main thing to also consider with this, I'll throw it in my large size hands. I wear large size gloves, you can see there. Huge amounts of real estate. All the cut-ins work well. Even with all of my activity I was using with the knife, it never gave me any hot spots in the sense of like where the cut-ins were or anything like that. Now, I was really concerned about the jimping. When I saw the photos and saw it being used, I was like, oh man, is that jimping gonna be too aggressive? It is absolutely aggressive. It's not as aggressive as I thought. I mean, it is absolutely there. Don't fool yourself. If you don't really like a lot of jimping, you're not gonna like this knife. I see the value, particularly in hard use environments and or with gloves on, like particularly if it's either work gloves like you saw earlier, or like range gloves. You know, you're at the range, you're in the military, law enforcement, you wear gloves a lot when you're doing your activities. That's great because there is no slippage on this knife at all. Barehanded, it's doable for short periods of time. This is not a bushcraft knife. If you're thinking you're gonna bear down on this knife and you're gonna like carve out a spoon or a bowl or whittle a new owl for your son, I've been working on that lately, it's not comfortable for that long a period of time. But for some bearing down, making a few feather sticks to get your fire going if you had to, make a spear, or just go through a couple materials and throw it back in your pocket, it's very doable, and you can you can bear it. I hope that makes sense. It's there, you know it's there. You have heavy traction when you're going barehanded, but it's very enjoyable and good for glove wearers. So you just got to weigh that, man. I mean, you're looking at a heavy duty, overbuilt, tactically focused, utilitarian style knife. So if that doesn't fit what you're looking for, then this is not going to be the knife that you're going to enjoy using. For some of you, you're going to be like, that is exactly the amount of traction I am looking for, and I need that heavy traction in my blades. And to wrap up the handle here, the full length is 5.3 inches, and the actual handle from handle, that's that extra little pommel portion there, it's like 5.2. So, you know, big, thick. It'll absolutely take up real estate in your pocket. You know it's there, but it actually, I can have my full set of keys, and you know, I've definitely worn it to the office a few times when I'm going to certain environments. You know, got done a few hikes with it. So I mean, it's a beast with that weight, but it's not overly cumbersome. I mean, it's a brick, you know it's there. And the best way I could leave some analogy with is basically think of like a wave, a Leatherman wave, or maybe like a Super Tool 300, a Charge, something like that. This wave weighs 8.7 ounces, again 8.2 on this guy, similar thicknesses. So I mean, that's a good weight feel. So if you don't mind carrying a big multi-tool in your pocket, then maybe you won't really mind this. For some people, and for a lot of people, including myself, it's a very limited use knife. I'm not gonna be like, yeah, I go to the office every day with this 8.5 ounce almost knife in my pocket. But there will be environments that I do throw it in, particularly if I know I need to use a lot of heavy use, and I'm not wanting to dedicate to an actual fixed blade. I've got a zoo of dogs back here, so I apologize if there's some barking and I have to pause abruptly. The whole neighborhood seems to be out right now. And Tommy the trail dog seems to be riling some of them up. So as we get to it, guys, we're going to hit the price point with you. Now, I bought this for $169 over on Blade HQ. As I'm making this video, Blade HQ is the only website that has it for sale right now. I will have links to GP Knives and Amazon below as well. I'm sure over time they will carry it as well. This is a newer knife, so just stay up to date. But right now, I know Blade HQ has got it, and we appreciate it when you purchase through the hyperlinks that we offer to you guys, regardless if it's those three websites or it's Knockaround Sunglass, Mystery Ranch, 511 Tactical, or any of the other ones that we have. We always have links below. We really appreciate it when you purchase through those links. And I want to thank our PayPal supporters as well. You guys are awesome. You know, those that give the $5, $10, you know, whatever is easy for you a month through PayPal is much appreciated. It helps me get out there, buy gear just like what you're seeing today, so that I can make content just like this. So at $170, I think that's actually really competitive for what I'm about to show you here for a USA made knife with all of the materials and locking mechanism and things that I'm about to drop on you. So other than that, I'm going to drop in here for another USA made knife. This is the Gerber Auto 06 we touched on earlier. Very overbuilt, heavy duty knife, 7.2 ounces, so an ounce lighter than the Seal XR, but aluminum handle scales with stainless steel liners in there. It is not ambidextrous, so there may be some left-handed versions out there, but to my knowledge, there's no, you know, ambidextrous option there. Obviously an auto feature, some of you really connect with that. Some of you either can't purchase autos where you live, or you're a little concerned, you know, you're like, yeah, that's springs and mechanisms, and if it breaks, then what do you do? This is a manual folder, much easier to take care of and maintain in the field if there was an issue, things like that. Similar broad blade, 3.7 actual blade length, cutting edge is about 3.5, a little bit thinner on the blade stock as well, an S30V steel. So still really good, not quite as good as S35vn. If I have a choice, I prefer S35vn over the S30V. I just feel like it works a little bit better for me. And then this guy's gonna be right around that same price, 170 to 190 bucks. Just depends on kind of who, what, when, where, why, and color combinations and things like that. So there's that version right there for you guys. And then as another option, just kind of throw in the mix, the Recon 1 from Cold Steel. That's going to run you about $100 on average, maybe even a little less depending on where you pick it up. 4-inch blade, and then an actual cutting edge 3.75, G10 handle scales, no liners, much slimmer, much lighter than the other two at 5.3 ounces. So a much lighter knife, ambidextrous as well. Saber grind now with these models, and S35vn steel, but it's made in Taiwan. So with that, that's why you see the like difference of about $70 and less mechanisms and things like that. The triad locking mechanism is super rock solid, so strong, love it. And so to give you some data, you know, and just kind of help you with your decision making, the Recon One is really the most EDCable. If you like big, heavy knives, but you actually want to carry it regularly, it's the slimmest, it's the lightest. So to me, it's the one that will be most likely carried on a day-to-day basis around town and in less like quote unquote war zone, you know, environments, or, you know, military and law enforcement, or, you know, rescue and first responder type environments. The Gerber, if you like and you need and you just feel like an auto feature is what you're looking for, and or the jimping is kind of a no-go for you on the XR, then that's where this Gerber really comes in, has a really good strength, and still comes in a little lighter. But if you want that really big, beefy blade and you don't want an automatic feature, you don't want the springs to think about, you like flippers, you know, that type of stuff, well then that's where the XR comes into play, and you just want that strength without having to be concerned with a mechanism like on the automatic. So guys, to kind of wrap up this idea, I wanted to touch on the fixed blade versus folder, right? And we got two SOG knives, again, the SOG Seal Pup Elite, about $75. You can get it with nylon or Kydex sheaths, a couple different options out there. Great knife, really love it a lot. And what the XR is modeled after, just in kind of a folder form, basically. Then down here we have the SOG Pillar. Apparently, when I posted some of these photos, you guys weren't even really aware. I did a review 2 years ago maybe on this, when it first came out. USA made, CPM S35vn steel, full tang all the way through with micarta handle scales, comes with a Kydex sheath. I've seen it as low as 165. Right now it's about 190, so very competitive with this folder, definitely in that ballpark compared to that. And you really got to ask yourself, does the convenience of having a folder, because that's definitely a big part of it. I can fold it up, put it in my pocket. I don't have to strap a sheath to my pants. I don't have to fumble with clothing. I can keep it more concealed if that's an issue. You know, those type of things. Does the weight and the convenience, sorry, does the convenience of it outweigh the weight and size of this knife compared to a fixed blade? Because even this one down here weighs like 7 ounces. Or does the ultimate strength of a fixed blade, where there are no moving parts, there's a sheath, the durability of that outweigh whatever convenience a folder that's overbuilt like this has to offer? I mean, that's ultimately what you got to decide, but I think that's really where it comes down to. It comes down to convenience. What makes more sense to you compared to the durability that you feel like you're going to need? Well, guys, there you have it. In conclusion, this beast of a folder in the Seal XR, the build quality, the materials, the fit and finish are absolutely there. For me, it's so overbuilt. I will use it from time to time, but when I'm looking at it compared to like the SOG Pillar, if I need something that hard use, I'm going to probably gravitate more to a fixed blade, unless the convenience of the pocket knife and maybe the environment I'm in, it makes more sense to have a pocket knife than a fixed blade. Maybe you're in an urban environment and you want that durability, but you don't want this knife hanging off your belt or something like that. Well then, yeah, this does absolutely make some sense. And has absolutely a place for those who either love the beast pocket knives, they're just overbuilt, beast mode folders, or you need that convenience over the full durability of a fixed blade. So love to hear your guys' thoughts though. Where do you fall on the Seal XR? Do you love it? Is it a no-go for you? And if so, why? Do you love it or why not? Look forward to hearing the comments and reading the comments below. I love the conversations that we have here. And I invite you to subscribe if you're not a current subscriber. Hit that subscription button. Check the other video popping up. Check us on Instagram and Facebook as well. That's where you can see up and coming stuff. You can see, like, I've been leading up to this knife for like a week on Instagram, letting you guys know we're having conversations. You guys are giving me ideas to touch on in the videos and stuff like that. So it's another way just to connect with me. And guys, finally, always remember, stay equipped, stay prepared, and we'll see you out there.